What's up, guys?
What's
Hey,
happening?
hey,
This is a really cool episode of the rotation, kind of a trip down memory lane for me. I'm Carlos Ramita, and yeah, we we're starting this show, the rotation with Suncoast Normal. Um, Let me do our theme music. Boom, boom.
In my soul, you're a corner in my heart.
Yeah, Gary is like a much more enthusiastic opener. You know what I mean?
That's
I I
interesting.
I've like, I've got like all these things I gotta check out the mix board, and I gotta fucking type on my keyboard, and I gotta put captions up and put the theme music going, and I gotta get Instagram going. So like I focus on all these different things. And as you two probably are aware, it's hard for me to focus on more than one thing at once. Uh, so we it's the typical host group is not in right now. Gary unfortunately is in the hospital.
Mhm.
I think he's about to head home today or tomorrow or something like that. Something to do with his leg. When he was in studio last time, he had this big boot thing on his leg, and that's why he hasn't been in the studio most days. He hasn't been told that he can drive, and dude lives like 2 hours away from this shop.
Wow.
Like he doesn't seem to understand how like coming in on a link works. So um but Gary is fine. He's gonna be doing great. He's gonna be out soon, and he's gonna be home. Kano's gonna be coming in shortly, as everybody who's watching and listening knows. He just had a baby, so the baby's
Oh
crying.
wow.
Yeah,
that's a
it's
miracle.
yeah. We've got actually. Speaking of miracle, here's a good way to show that.
Oh, wow. What's
His
his baby's name?
Giovanni.
Giovanni.
Hey,
Giovanni.
Giovanni.
I think Carlos,
It's-
Um,
he opted against Carlos.
I think it's his middle name. We'll
Not at
ask
the
him
table,
again.
Carlos.
So I'm Carlos Hermita. I'm co-host of the rotation. I've got here my old buddies Tom Quigley and Pete Sessa. You guys, we worked together for how long did we work together? It was
For a
like
while, from
6
2014 till
years.
like 2018, 2017,
It was 4 or 5 years, something
4
like
or
that.
5 years. We had multiple businesses, office in Ybor,
Yeah.
and a ton of events.
So
I mean, you traveled.
yeah, Tom took me to Las Vegas and to Colorado and a bunch of cool places. I couldn't get on a ride in Las Vegas once because I was too fat.
I got that picture.
That was the best.
But we'll talk all about that later. We're doing a bunch of cool things on our own here. I think the goal of today's show is to get you guys together. We were advocating for medical use back in the day. He's banging on the window now. We were advocating for medical use back in the day. We put one of the main things that we did, when we got together was we supported Amendment 2 in just about everything that we did. And you guys, of course, started the Florida Cannabis Coalition and had me work on that quite a bit. And that was instrumental in showing Floridians what the cannabis industry could bring to Florida. And now we're doing a bunch of cool things on our own. I think the best way to continue this is just kind of go one by one and have you guys kind of say what you're up to and whatnot. So let's go ahead and start with Mr. Thomas Quigley.
Well, go ahead. You got a
Yeah,
question?
just let us know what's going on, Tom.
Yeah, so me and my wife, we opened up a coffee shop in Valrico, Florida, a week before the pandemic hit, Chill Cawfee. And one of the main reasons that we chose to do a coffee shop was over the years, a lot of times when we were speaking to people about legalization of cannabis and THC, there was a lot of confusion about psychoactives and how psychoactives affect people. And one of the common terms that we were able to share with people is 7 billion people use a psychoactive, caffeine, and they drink coffee throughout this world. And there's no fear when you talk about coffee. So, by opening up a coffee shop and being able to be in our community, I was traveling for a number of years. I was out west in California and Arizona and Nevada, and my wife convinced me, well, why don't we do what you're doing back here at home? And that was when the Florida Farm Bill changed, and it opened up the opportunity to do something like that. So Chill Cawfee is coffee. It stands for cannabinoids and wellness for every experience. And we're here day in and day out, helping people to learn more about plant medicine and how it can help them.
Wow, I did not know I thought you were just trying to be cheeky and cute by spelling coffee that way. I never put that together.
Yeah. Well, and it is cheeky and cute. My wife's from Queens. I'm from New York. She says coffee. It gets a lot of people talking when they come in here. It's differentiated us from, the other coffee shops that are out there. And it's unique. And we have 2 locations. The other store is in Riverview, and we're attached to Gracie Brandon over there. So we have another whole audience of consumers that are athletes and a lot of law enforcement, a lot of military personnel that we're able to expose to, alternative healing and plant medicine, whether it's cannabis, CBD, mushroom beverages, or we brew up kratom tea as well. And we do a lot of get-togethers here with like the Tampa Bay Psychedelic Society. And we really wanted to create a social, because one of the things that, I came into the industry as a patient, but I had a mass on my pancreas. So we thought it was pancreatic cancer. And then in the early days when, we would go and we would bring a lot of patients up on stage to tell their stories, there were a lot of PTSD diagnoses, a lot of veterans with PTSD. And my official diagnosis was PTSD. So, when you start looking at that and realizing that a lot of these veterans were getting their med card and they were going home, and maybe their spouse didn't approve of cannabis, or they still felt guilty about it, we really wanted to provide a place that was an open door for people to come, communicate. We allow consumption outside. We do consumption-based events, and just really to integrate into our community and our neighborhood where I've lived since 1992. And, that was our real intention when we opened up here, was to help the community here know a lot more about what, the world and the United States is doing. Because, even though we live in this little bubble and we were in it for all those years with the advocacy work that we did, there's still a large portion of the population that's confused.
And it's worth mentioning too that, yes, you do a lot of great things with Chill Cawfee, but Chill Cawfee isn't the only thing that you do. You did a lot of great work with the media when it came to the hemp bill. And what else is the gamut of Tom Quigley besides Chill Cawfee?
Yeah, so hemp, I'm still with House of Jane's Brew. They're out of Arizona. So, I have my wholesale distribution, helping to supply core ingredients to companies on the hemp side. House of Jane was a cannabis company, one of the first ones in 2013 in California. And I went on board and I helped them get acquired by a public entity. And then I assumed the role of CEO for a year at Jane's Brew. And then we converted Jane's Brew, or House of Jane. We went over to the hemp side. And we got a facility out in Arizona that's a nutraceutical facility where we do nano-emulsification, we do capsules, we do gummies, we do a number of different products there. But the real reason was to extend the brand extension, because the cannabis market, obviously was limited to the amount of retail stores that could sell a product like that. And, I was on a few of the applications here in Florida after we passed Amendment 2 in 2016. And my intent was to bring that brand to Florida. Back then, there were really no brands in the space. if you look at it. But since Amendment 2 passed, we could see now we have over 700,000 patients in the industry. We have a number of different brands that have popped up and into the market. We have a number of different people that we've worked with over the years that have gone out, like yourself, Carlos, and created your brand, Chillum, which is probably one of the better known. And, we continued even throughout that to do the advocacy and expose the truth, because there is a lot of confusion and there's a lot of self-interest in this industry. There was back during Amendment 2, and we saw it firsthand. We didn't pass it the first time around. And, we finally got the community together the second time around, and we passed it in 2016, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. And the same thing's going on with other ethnobotanicals. I work with Soul Quest out in Orlando with ayahuasca. I work with Dr. Kelly King and some of the local physicians here with doing microdosing consulting, and helping people understand that there are other alternatives. That cannabis is kind of the thing that opens up your mind to holistic healing. And when I say holistic healing, that means even nutrients from food and being able to supplement some of the deficiencies that we have in our body that are causing these side effects. Pharmaceuticals almost killed me twice, and that was the reason I got involved in this industry. I was physically addicted to opioids for 3 years, which, destroyed my liver. I had a misdiagnosis with pancreatic cancer. So, I'm no stranger to ailments. And then, I have a bone disease that causes these spurs to grow into my spine. I've had 5 back surgeries in the last 2 years, hip replacement, neck surgery. So, all of those things, at the same time of being an entrepreneur and a business owner and, working with a lot of companies that have, been not only successful in this space, but, there's been a lot of failures as well over the years, unfortunately, that we've been able to learn from, though, and be able to, shift going forward. And, that's why, I'm happy that me and Pete are back working again together. And this past year has been really instrumental. And, and same thing with you, Carlos. I know, I'm going to say a phrase from a friend of mine. We've been holding pinkies from afar for a while, but, we all did a lot of great work during those years. And then the business end of it started happening. And, the way that the laws panned out, it really blocked a lot of people from getting into the industry. But, Nikki Fried came into office here in Florida and passed what they felt would be the gold standard for the country with a hemp bill that was, brought together. I know Eric Stevens was on the committee, Holly Bell, and a lot of people that actually created a very good protective bill that allowed stores like Chillum and allowed stores like Chill Cawfee to actually open up and thrive and be able to, communicate plant medicine to the masses. We only have 700,000 patients in this state, but we have over 21 million people and over 10,000, hemp stores that are out there that are doing it. Now, not everybody is doing it great, but they're doing it. A lot of people are learning as they're going. And, I see a lot of good stuff happening in the space, but I also see a lot of self-interest and a lot of negative things out there as well that, could put a halt to progression if we don't address them.
Though the people that operate off of like solely their own self-interest, they're horrible and they need to be weeded out. But they don't last very long. Like, look at us three. Like, we're here on this podcast together, and we started working together 10 years ago. So I mean, we're still at it. It's I don't want to say it's in our blood, but we have a certain drive, we have a certain passion to push these things forward. So yeah, I mean, kudos to you guys for all your passion and everything. Kudos to you, Tom, for all your passion. It's good to come from a pinky into a hug. But did I hear you correctly? You're working a little bit more with Pete.
Yeah, we have an event coming up here, July 13th. I've been speaking at all of the past events. I've been back speaking at it. Obviously Pete's been running day to day from
So
2016 on 2017. When
let,
I was out in Colorado, I worked with Canopy Boulder for a while in startups. I was in Arizona, and then until my wife convinced me to come back here. But Pete's been,
well,
you know,
let
keeping strong.
yeah, let's go to Pete. Pete, you went ahead and took our what we used to call them Canadays back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
And developed it to include cannabis, include psychedelics, and include this broader message, a holistic message. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'll let you just go ahead and jump in there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for, having me on the show. It's like it really does, kind of feel like old times. And yeah, I'm just thinking back to when we used to work together. I still one of the best experiences was working with Carlos because Carlos got every one of my movie quotes and vice versa. And anytime and to this day, nobody gets what I'm saying. And I'm like, damn it. I'm just gonna laugh to myself. But so I definitely miss working with Carlos.
What
Um,
one thing that I will always remember is like we got like a sponsorship from somebody. You put on their hat, like they sent us a hat, and you had a jacket and their hat on, and you were just like quoting Wayne's World. You're like,
Please, contract or no, I will not bow to any sponsor.
it's like some people just do things because they get paid. And I just think it's
It's really sad. Oh my God. Yeah, so I've been pushing forward with Florida Cannabis Coalition and the Green Carpet events. We started Florida Cannabis Coalition because I had moved from New York back in 2011, and I stayed on as a marketing executive for a radio company that I was working for, and we used to host a lot of events like at the Super Bowl and the Grammy Awards and Country Music Awards and stuff like that. Um, and I was kind of disillusioned with the whole corporate marketing thing, so I was looking for something else, and I didn't have that business. I left that company, and my brother knew Tom, and we connected, and like immediately I think we met at a Starbucks, and immediately clicked. And because I had always been the cannabis guy too, even when I was an executive, I was always like, yeah, it's Pete's the weed guy. And we started the Florida Cannabis Coalition, and we started doing those Canna Day events, those larger events, and we did like Canna Day, and then Canna Ed Day, and Canna Stock, and Canna Biz Day. Like there was all these different events that we did, and then we eventually evolved that into green carpet events, which were smaller events, like local networking events, for people that wanted to learn more and be in the business. So I've been, doing that until, COVID hit, and I kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on doing events for a little while. And then once, COVID started to, be on the downturn, went back to larger events, and it started to incorporate psychedelics into the events, which was kind of a big deal because people wanted it was already part of the culture and part of what people in the cannabis space were exploring themselves, and so giving a platform to that was very helpful for a lot of people. So started hosting the Cannadelic events a few years ago. I think the first one was in January or February 2022. And
I'm sorry to cut you off though, but like I started doing the whole mushroom thing here at Chillum way after you started the whole Canadelic thing. And just out of curiosity, how did that idea just like was there just like a come to fruition moment where you were just like, you know what, fuck it, let's include psychedelics? Like what happened? Were you tripping on acid and smoked weed today, or I don't know?
well, there was a lot of mental health issues that stemmed from COVID. And I think people were looking for solutions to that. But even before that, we used to work with Chaz as well, Chaz Colavito,
Yeah.
and Chaz was always trying to get psychedelics worked into the events somehow. He was, that was originally like he was always talking about that, and I was like, well, I don't want to scare off the dispensaries, and because you don't know, like, you were already kind of pushing the envelope with cannabis. To add psychedelics in there, you don't know, they might see it as competition or what. So I didn't really know what was going on. So it took a little while for that to take, and then there was some other people that had expressed some interest in that. So that was kind of the impetus of it. And then what happened was, it turns out that all these people in the cannabis space had this kind of psychedelic side to them. They're like, oh, well, I don't only grow cannabis. I am a big proponent of mushrooms. And so it was a big deal. So the thing that's kind of funny about it is I remember the first time taking like a big macro dose of mushrooms back when I was in college. And I used to I remember taking these mushrooms and sitting in this room and watching this little 13-inch TV in this giant room. That it was really funny, like when we were in college. This was back in the like 96, 97. And I remember watching TV commercials, and all of a sudden I figured out how marketing and advertising works. Like I could see like what was behind it, what was, why they were saying what they were saying and all of that. And I kind of built my whole career on that day, on that moment. So
Wow.
I had this thing where I was like, well, mushrooms make people smarter. Like we got to give mushrooms to everybody. They just make people smarter. So I used to actually have a big long trench coat when I was in college, and I used to fill my pockets with mushrooms, and I used to go down to the bars, and I used to just hand mushrooms to people, like, here, eat these, here, eat these, here, eat these. Because I just wanted I was like, I don't know how, but they make you smarter. And now they have fMRIs that say that mushrooms connects your brain to itself, and increase your the connections in your brain, and it actually shows that it makes you smarter and helps your brain talk to itself. So it was really interesting to see that kind of come to fruition. But yeah, there are parts of they're two sides of the same coin, I think. Cannabis can be a psychedelic. Um, but I think they're used a little bit differently. And I think psychedelics definitely can help people deal with, trauma. They can help people deal with certain issues that they don't want to deal with. There's huge promise for PTSD and disconnecting those body sensations, those real traumatic sensations from the actual memories. So it's been something of a passion of mine. And it's an ongoing process. Like I'm not someone that claims to be fully healed from my traumas and my issues and stuff like that. But I think psychedelics help you get there faster than just traditional talk therapy or somatics and things like that. So it's been really, eye-opening to see kind of that psychedelic revolution or renaissance where, a lot of people are open to it. Mushrooms have exploded, like they're kind of like everywhere in the culture. And people are looking at this stuff as not as just these party drugs anymore, like MDMA, for example. Ecstasy was long considered, the rave drug. You take ecstasy and go to the rave and have a lollipop. There was a club in Manhattan called the Limelight, and when they used to give you a hit of ecstasy with your admission, and yeah, like at the front door. But now it's like, you take someone with PTSD and you give them ecstasy or MDMA, and you have them relive some of these traumas, and they can disassociate from the actual emotions connected to it, and actually relive those moments without that emotional attachment. And it really is like groundbreaking stuff. And this stuff isn't new. It's it's been around for a long time. LSD was originally considered the cure for addiction, for especially alcohol addiction. The founder of AA was a big proponent of LSD, and it got demonized by the government, obviously, because the government always has to have an excuse to do stuff. So long story short, there was a anti-war movement, and you can't just be against people for being anti-war. You have to demonize them somehow. So they made LSD became very popular with the anti-war movement, and in order to target the anti-war movement, they scheduled LSD as a Schedule One drug, so that they could target that community. And all the research stopped because it's Schedule One, means it has no benefits. So it's been really amazing to see that stuff is coming back into the mainstream, so that people can be helped by these substances. And what's funny is, Tom, you mentioned coffee earlier, and I don't know if you've read or have watched any of the footage of Michael Pollan, when he talks about, he wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind, that is all about psychedelics. Michael Pollan is is a science author. He's written a lot about food and things like that. And he says that the most psychedelic experience he had was when he quit coffee for a year, and then drank coffee again after that year, and he said it was totally a psychedelic experience.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing that we have these substances. It just goes to your point that we have these substances that we think are kind of like benign every day. Like Starbucks is huge, and like people drink tons of coffee. It's one of these biggest consumed beverages in the world, and it's a psychoactive. It's not something that people have done forever. And it's something that we almost take for granted, and we don't look at it for what it actually is.
That's a subject that's always really interested me. Some people are like, tryptamines basically are like LSD, mushrooms, DMT, things like that. A lot of people will say that, okay, tryptamines, that's the end all be all of psychedelics. Nothing else really fits in that category unless it's like actively working on those receptors. But then you get like things like peyote and like things like MDMA, which have other mechanisms, and then you have like disassociatives like ketamine.
Mhm.
And then you can get even deeper into it, like things like there is most definitely, and I'm very interested, by the way, anybody listening or watching, keep an eye out for it, because I'm very interested in holding a cannabis ceremony under the Suncoast Normal name. Just to get a bunch of patients together to consume their medicine in such a way where they have this like really profound experience.
We're doing that. We've been doing that. Yeah.
Very, very, very cool. I've been trying to find somebody that could facilitate that for Normal for a little bit, and I thought I found somebody, but it fell through. But then you have like experiences like like sensory deprivation chambers, and
Dark retreats.
yeah, like you can get a psychedelic experience. You can kind of like trip, like essentially like the term psychedelic, granted this is a cannabis show, but like the term psychedelic is just like mind enhancing, you know what I mean? Like it's just like changes your mind a little bit so you can grow. But yeah, I'm sorry I ranted a little bit.
I wanted to jump in also. A big change for me. I worked with a lot of mentors in the cannabis space. At ArcView, we made very close relationships with people like Steve D'Angelo and Sue Sicily. So I worked with Sue Sicily out in Arizona, and she was doing the studies for the government with marijuana. And she had a ranch, and I've been to her ranch, and she had DEA license to also administer MDMA and psychedelics, and she was getting more progress with that with PTSD. And that's what started to shift my mind back then on, wow, these psychedelics actually have more of an opportunity. And people like Steve D'Angelo said, yeah, cannabis is a mild psychoactive, so we can start the process, but really it's increasing awareness. So the tryptamines, and they found that, the creator of anesthesia. If you know what anesthesia does, it reduces your awareness. So you can go under surgery and you're not aware of what's happening. Well, the tryptamines, when we consume them, they increase our awareness. So they allow you to be able to, work on these things. But again, the psychedelic or the cannabis alone is not it. You have to do what's called the work that goes along with it, and I've learned that more in the deeper psychedelics like ayahuasca and the ayahuasca retreats and the iboga and mushroom retreats, and that's another piece of it that people don't realize. You don't just take a psychoactive or psychedelic and you're cured.
Yeah, I had somebody in my life that could have sworn that if I ate mushrooms with them, that all my problems would go away. I was like, dude, like you're talking to, my MO back in the day was smoking weed with my buddies and going into cow fields down in South Florida, take mushrooms. Yeah, you gotta do the work. The scientific approach to psychedelic therapy is going to be like everything very soon, and I'm excited just to be a part about it. But let's get back on track here. We've got, we could go on psychedelics all day, but we got some interesting things happening here in Florida pertaining to cannabis. I'm Pete, you brought up Chaz earlier. Before I get into everything, I just want to say I'm very proud of Chaz. I think we should have a show with Chaz on and YouTube.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting. We, back when we were working with Chaz and we were supporting Amendment 2, I mean, nothing could say anything wrong. We had to pass Amendment 2. And back when we were working together, I take credit for the whether you hate me for it or not now, Pete, but I take credit for when the Florida Cannabis Coalition got the True Leaf sponsorship, because a lot of that was me communicating with Kim Rivers about it. I know that the Cannadelic event, I mean, there was a Cannadelic event that I was at that you guys were throwing out people getting petitions for this time. I just want to talk to you guys. I know, Tom, I know you're Yes on 3. I see your shirt on. Suncoast Normal is a Yes on 3 organization. Pete, have you changed your mind at all on the situation, or are you still iffy about this Truly Brand initiative, or what's going on there?
Well, I think that the issue, became, so I think that there is a rift between the, legal cannabis industry and the hemp industry. And that's where, I did not want to get in the middle of it, with these events, because we had a lot of, both on the floor. So I did not want to, pick a side. I just kind of wanted to promote everyone. So that's where the petitioning came from. There were no, and to be fair, there were no petitioners allowed there for anything. There were some other petitioners for like other things that were not allowed to be there. But when it comes to the Amendment 3, obviously that there are, the biggest arguments against it are that it's just kind of a money grab, or that it's going to be, limit, the amount of involvement that regular people can have in the industry. And it's kind of the same as Amendment 2. It's kind of the same arguments that we heard then. But the same, response to that is also true, that there has to be baby steps towards those end goals. So I do think that passing Amendment 3 is the best way for us to get to where we want to be. And where we want to be is, open access for people to, have their own shops, a horizontal market where you can have growers and people that can and retailers and processors and all of that, and as well as people having a right to grow their own cannabis, which is kind of like the holy grail. That's what we want people to be able to do. But we can't get there all at once. So just like we had to have medical as a stepping stone, I think just getting adult use legalized would be a stepping stone towards getting there.
Mhm.
And the means by which we get there are almost irrelevant as long as we get there. It's interesting to see the governor come out against Amendment 3, and the rationale that he's been using is kind of odd, like the streets are going to smell like marijuana everywhere. And that's the main argument against it that I keep seeing him mention. It's just kind of interesting that all of a sudden the governor who is championing medical is now against the adult use bill. And I think that there's probably some political motivations for that. But one of the other things that he says is that it's so broad, it's such a broad bill, like there's no restrictions, there's none of this. And what I don't think people understand, and what I really hope that we can clarify during this podcast, is that in order to get a bill, in order to get an amendment, a constitutional amendment on the ballot, it has to be what's called a single use issue, right? So it has to be a single issue. And if the bill is not broad and just contains one issue and has too many confounders in there, or restrictions, or details, the Supreme Court of Florida will throw it out. We've seen it happen before with other initiatives to get a constitutional amendment on there. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's you're saying that it's broad, but if it weren't broad, then how would we get it on the ballot? It's impossible. So again, I think it's a stepping stone to get to where we want to be, and I think it's going to be a good thing. So I am supporting the initiative. I'm hoping that we do pass it. I think if we don't pass it, it would be very difficult to get it back on the ballot, especially with all the confusion and the governor coming out and all of that. So I think it would be a good thing, for the people of Florida, for the industry, for people that want to be in the business. I think it's going to be something that's going to benefit everyone. So yeah, so to answer your question, I do think that it would be beneficial, and I am supporting Amendment 3.
It's hard to okay. All right. So I spent the past 2 years fighting the medical marijuana treatment centers. Tom has been there by my side a few times. It's very easy for me to see why I should be against the amendment. You know what I mean? Especially if I'm looking at it from my specific point of view. Carlos Hermida, who owns a hemp company that fought against these MMTCs, who sells hemp, and and regardless of what hemp bill passes or gets vetoed, the truth of the matter is that once adult use passes, a lot of people are going to stop buying my shit and start going to the adult use places. Like, that's just a fact. So it's very easy for me to see why I should be against this bill. It's very easy for me to see why I would not want to support a company like Trulieve who put it forward. And as you guys, I don't know if you guys can see the comment section, but we get people that watch this that are for the amendment and against the amendment. And I think it's going to be a constant battle until November.
I think that's designed. That's designed by the governments. I saw this happen in Arizona We saw it happen in 2014 with dividing the community that's unified on a single subject like this.
It seems like, and you guys, Tom brought this up to me like a week ago, where he there's a lot of parallels here to medical necessity argument and passing amendment 2. So if anybody that's can remember, the medical necessity argument was a precedence that was set here in Florida, that there was once, not to go too far into the particulars, but there was once a court case where somebody got arrested. I think it was for growing marijuana, and they claimed that they had a medical necessity to grow that marijuana, and the judge ruled in their favor. The judge let them off. They said it was okay, that they weren't going to see any, and that allowed for any judge to rule in favor of medical marijuana for any type of medical necessity. If you could prove that you had a medical need to use cannabis in Florida prior to the passing of Amendment 2, you could argue that. But there's a lot of things wrong with that. Essentially, if you're looking at the medical necessity argument, you're essentially saying patients should get arrested and then argue their case later. And as you can tell in the comment section, there's a lot of people that hemp is cannabis, marijuana is already legal, but it's regulated by the Department of Agriculture. I've got a stop sale right now put on my THCA flower. Tom, do you sell THCA?
No, we never did. We have very limited amount of products that we do distribute here, but I never touch the THCA. We don't do any flower out of our stores.
As much as distributors will tell you that it's legal, that that it's okay to sell THCA, as much as people selling THCA will tell you that it's okay to sell THCA, it's not really allowed here in Florida. So there's a lot of wrong with hemp being cannabis. I think I opened Chillum, so long ago, because my dreams, my aspiration in this industry is to own a cannabis dispensary. I want to own a retail operation for real cannabis flower and concentrates, all that stuff. And it's nice owning Chillum and selling all the stuff that I do, but it's not that. I don't even think it's anything near that. And there's a lot of confusion right now. And a lot of it is by design. I think the governor is kind of playing into that. And I don't really like to seem like I'm Team DeSantis because I sell hemp. But what do you guys think? Like, we need this, right? Like, this is something that needs to be passed, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, this is our chance to get it into our Constitution. Federal laws are changing. They're trying to change the federal farm bill right now. A lot of people that are coming out, No on 3, they really have a vendetta against True Leaf, and I could see why. I can totally see why. They're big, they're growing, but you know what? They deserve some accolades. They opened 200 stores. No other cannabis company has ever done that. They've built brands in the state. They've partnered with companies like, our friend Chris at Sunshine Cannabis. These were people that actually were able to build businesses and partner with dispensaries. Same thing as, Rise and Surterra and all these other companies that are in the space. That was our real intention when we were working back then, was we wanted to get into the cannabis space. We wanted to have a cannabis business. That opportunity didn't, so we pivoted. Okay. I just don't understand the hatred that is so vile, that people are trying to, really shut down something and not look at it from an open mind. I mean, I own 4 hemp businesses. I consult a number of hemp businesses. Essentially looking at, like you, Carlos, I would essentially, if I bought into everything that's being said, I would be totally against it as well. But why be against something when we could take a step forward in the right direction? We could be on the right side of history.
I totally understand the hate, towards Trulieve, though. I mean, they are fucking ruthless. I mean, absolutely ruthless. There's rumors that they advocated for against home grow in the legislature. It's just rumors. I mean, I can't prove that. But I can prove that they definitely spent a lot of money trying to get the hemp industry down. And it was fucking brutal. We had legislators calling us drug dealers. I mean, licensed companies by the state were then considered drug dealers, and these awful companies duping people, operating off of loopholes, blah, 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 blah. And it really fucked with my head a little bit. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I found it difficult to even work like a couple of months after the whole legislator thing. And it also kind of pisses me off too. A lot of these people who hold this stance, I never saw them in Tallahassee. I never saw them give public testimony. They seem to only really care now when they can bitch about it online. So it's a very confusing time for me.
Yeah, Carlos, I think I understand exactly, where you're coming from. And I guess, the kind of the thing that the way that I've been looking at it is that regardless of how this bill is being, put on the ballot, regardless of, kind of the forces behind it, if you look at it inside of a vacuum and you look at the bill itself, and you look at the framework in which we're allowed to have an amendment. I keep saying bill, but it's actually an amendment. Um, you know, there's no other path. There's no other way. I don't see in this state the way that the Supreme Court is set up and the way that this whole structure is set up where you need 60% of the vote. I don't see another way to get adult use passed. So it's not gonna lock in, all the existing structure forever. It doesn't say that they can't open up regulations and can't open up the market. It just doesn't specify that that's going to happen now, which would have precluded the Supreme Court from getting involved, from allowing it to be on the ballot. So I kind of I kind of look at it on its face, the value of the bill itself, of the amendment itself, what can possibly pass, and that is why I think it's, I could, go into like the whole history and all of that and all the reasons to, all the different issues that people have had with the dispensaries and, in the hemp industry and stuff. I mean, I've been talking about it for years. Um, but, at the end of the day, this is going to be, the only path forward. You can only operate in these loopholes and in this gray area for so long before the government's going to come and collapse it down. And what would you like to do? Build a business up to like a really great, you have this really great business, and all of a sudden the federal farm bill comes down and crushes you and takes your whole business out. I mean, it's not sustainable. You need a path to, to full legitimacy. And I don't see another one. If people have, another argument against, like, if there's another way to get this done, I'm all ears to that, but I
Well,
don't see it.
This is
I
our chance to end prohibition,
I
and
I don't have the other normal board members on with us right now, but we do everything as together. I often bitch here at Chillum where it's like, Chillum's, if I decide to do something, I just start doing it. You know what I mean? And I inform the employees this is where we're going, right? It's a longer process with normal. We have to get together, we have to discuss things, we have to talk, we have to vote, we have to weigh the pros and cons, things like that. When it came time after the Supreme Court review to be like, all right, are we up or against? I was arguing that we should be against, but the truth of the matter is that it's hard to be against ending the arrests. From the beginning, when I first started fucking with you guys, you guys used to make fun of me because I would be like, oh, I'm such an awesome pothead, I'm the best pothead in the world, stuff like that, and they're like, oh, you don't want to say pothead. I am all for adult use. I think one of the biggest problems with our society is the judgments that we make on cannabis consumers. And I don't want to see cannabis consumers get arrested in any way whatsoever. So I mean, I get it, I fucking get it. Like, it's not going to be good for Chillum. It's not. It might
Listen,
not even be good for Chill Cawfee, but it's going to stop arrests. People are going to stop getting arrested for marijuana in the state of Florida, and that's something that we need to make sure happens next.
it is. It's going to stop the arrests. It's also our chance to end prohibition. If we don't do it now, there may be an opportunity to never do it. With the rescheduling of cannabis from 1 to 3, we could start seeing, these products in Walgreens if that's the next scenario. So, I mean, by voting it into our state constitution, it will give us protections. So we can have protections if the federal law does change. And that's what these individual state laws allowed companies to do, like in California, in Arizona, Nevada. Now we have all these states with not only medical, but recreational laws, that are in place that allow this access. We have more than 150 million tourists that come to Florida that don't access cannabis in our state. Those are revenue dollars that could come in for all of the individuals involved in the industry. We have the opportunity to build new brands around illegal and plan our future. This last 2 years for me too, Carlos, has been very stressful. I cannot plan my next 6 months without knowing what the next law is going to be. So having some kind of certainty in place is, I feel, more important than war. And I choose unity over war. Why fight back? Yeah, maybe these things that have been done were wrong, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. If we could come in and we can, use our voices and be able to help people to understand that on the other side of this is opportunity. I went through our old YouTube channel and I watched Pete's message the day after 2014 when we failed the passing of Amendment 2. And he went into this thing about, hey guys, keep your heads up. There's going to be opportunities. You can open up software companies. You can open up service companies. You can open up look at all the businesses that have spawned since 2014. We couldn't even put on an event in the state of Florida. The reason we started doing those events was we had to travel. Pete went to 420 College in California. I was at the Marijuana Business Academy in Colorado. We were at ArcView events working with Troy and Steve D'Angelo and some of the leaders in this industry. And Florida was behind the 8 ball back in 2014. We couldn't even tell event venues that it was a cannabis event when we first got started.
Florida
we couldn't even use the word
Coalition.
Yeah. It was and we couldn't even put posters or signs in the smoke shops in Ybor on 7th Avenue. They threw us out for bringing in a flyer that said we were having a cannabis event. So, I mean, if you look at that, the progress is fucking leaps and bounds from where we used to be. A lot of people don't understand the trials and tribulations that a lot of people had to go through to get here. A lot of the failures and the mistakes that were made to be able to get us into a position where the future is bright. There are going to be opportunities that come out of this. There are going to be opportunities for brands to expand in the space. Back in 2016, the same thing happened in Arizona. They divided the community and it didn't pass recreational. It did 2 years later. But now there's a huge, huge industry out there with lots of different brands, lots of different products that are in there. Also, the major hemp CBD brands, if you're a good brand and you're a good product that's out there, don't be surprised if some of these dispensaries come knocking on your door wanting to acquire you or roll you up. It happened to Select. Select was a CBD brand that got acquired out in Arizona for a large number. So, there's a lot of opportunities that come from it. And yeah, they did attack our businesses. And I don't feel that it was them. I feel it was the legislator. Carlos said something on his show a couple of weweeks ago, don't hate the players, hate the game. Look at what the legislators are doing. This is going to raise more money for both fucking sides. Don't you everybody see this? DeSantis coming out and raising for his PAC. Me and Pete were in John Morgan's house when this first started looking at what some of the motivations were behind raising capital to get Charlie Crist into office.
Yeah.
You know, people demonized John Morgan for a long time, and they came out against him. Why? Because it allowed them to raise capital to try and stop it. Sheldon Adelson came in. Why? Because they had gambling interests they were trying to do. So, you know, we can't buy into everything we hear and we see. We have to be more aware,
Yeah.
and be able to look at the truth. The truth will prevail.
Yeah.
You know, the attackers, whether they're attacking on one side or the other side, you know, are doing no good. If you don't have a solution, you're only causing the problem.
You know, that's really interesting, you know, and Carlos, you know, some of the things that you mentioned about, both you and Tom mentioned about how it's kind of like, you know, it's good, you know, the Amendment 3 would hurt the business, your particular business. I think that's what separates, you know, these, you know, being advocates for something and being passionate about something from just having, you know, business interests and just trying to, you know, chase the dollar. And I think that, you know, when you zoom out and you look at the big picture like that, and ending arrests is more important than my bottom line, you know, being higher. And you know, it's no secret that it's like, you know, I've been doing this for 10 years in the cannabis space, and you know, it's not like I'm, you know, rolling in dough. You know, it's something where I've always said that, you know, cannabis can be the catalyst for compassionate capitalism, was like a thing that I used to say when we would have this, you know, these events. And I think you guys exemplify that. And you know, I think that there are more issues in the cannabis space that need to be addressed. Even in the hemp space, just the whole space in general, you know, things like, you know, how do we address commercialization? You know, I think commercialization of cannabis is probably a bigger deal than most people think, you know, like you know, the soaring THC numbers, because that's the easy way to make a decision on what strain I want to buy, is just the higher number, is not great for the industry. You know, it's not great for consumers, and I think that, you know, things like this need to be addressed and talked about. And you know, it's not always about what's the best thing, you know, in your self-interest or my self-interest, but what's, you know, what's possible for the greater good. And you know, I thought, you know, since I used to say that, I've been kind of disillusioned, because I've seen the commercialization kind of take hold, and people just chasing the dollar and trying to, you know, make money wherever they can. But I think that the bigger message is more important. You know, I think that bringing people together and bringing, kind of the truth out about things, and how, you know, we can get to where we want to be, is the most important thing. And it's you know, it can be self-sacrificial sometimes, because you know, you're playing the game, and then all of a sudden the rules change, and you're looking at it and you're like, hey, you know, is my bottom line more important than this many people being arrested for this plant? Is my bottom line more important than, you know, the stuff that people are buying on the street that's been, you know, laced with stuff? And you know, I'll tell you right off the bat, I've smoked lace weed before, back in the day, back in the 90s. You know, I saw this guy hitting a joint, and I was like, hey, can I hit that? And it was angel dust. That was like, and I was like, you know, I took like really, really big hit, because I was only getting a hit once. And that was, you know,
Like,
quite
oh,
the
that's not weed.
experience. This is when I exhaled it, it tastes like menthol. It tastes like a Newport cigarette. So I'm like, whoa, what was that? And then all of a sudden the music was coming out of the speakers, like in these big blue, like waves, and it was all over the floor, and I was at this concert, and it was just crazy. But you know, like stuff
And
like
then you
that.
were in Debo's chicken coop.
Devo's chicken coop.
Hey, are you guys reading in the comments? You know, I just don't understand the hate and the intent to go after. Like this guy saying we should leave 1-star reviews to any business that supports the amendment. You know, why would you just go out and blatantly attack somebody that has a different point of view than you do? I just don't get it. You know, it's you know, whether it's one way or the other way, it really is sad that, you know, to make their point they have to be aggressive and
Look,
attacking.
you know, as
I can't see the comment.
I do get it. I do get it. You know, I understand it. Man, it's just some people have been kicked around their entire life, man. And then, you know, they're trying to do something good, and maybe they have a hemp company, or maybe they just consume the hemp products, and you know, they find some relief, or, you know, and then all of a sudden this obviously big fucking shitty corporation literally wants to be like Walmart. Like, what actual like company that cares about quality wants to be like the Walmart of what anything? You know, I've been in a Truly before where like I needed medicine, I needed Rick Simpson oil, and they told me that I could not get it because they were doing inventory, that they had it in stock, but they weren't able to subtract one. You know, and then this company goes, this big evil company goes, and they try to wipe out your entire industry. They keep you from growing weed at home. They try to wipe out this entire industry. They're fucking bullies. And like, I'm sorry, like, yes on 3, but I definitely support a boycott True Leaf. I definitely, you know, I Kim Rivers is just ruthless. She's fucking ruthless. There's no way around that. She's done everything in her power to make sure that she's the one on top and everybody else is beneath her. And it's hard for me to support Amendment 3. It really is. But here's the thing, it's the right fucking thing to do. It's just the right fucking thing to do. And I am going to put other people before my own self-interests 100% of the time. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that, 80% of the time. But you know,
I finally saw the comments. I was able to see how to see the comments. And, you know, I see a lot of, you know, it's about patients' rights, you know, it's not about self-interest. And yeah, you know, what I don't think people generally understand is when you're talking about a patient's rights. So, you know, just the term patient in and of itself, you have to have a medical marijuana card in order to have, you know, access to it. And there's 2 points that I wanted to make. The first is that I've met over the past 10 years countless people who refuse to get a medical marijuana card because they're not going to put their name on a list so that the government could come after them, or so that they might lose their benefits somewhere else, or their company might fire them, or stuff that's not even based in reality. But they refuse. They absolutely refuse. And it reminds me of before Amendment 2 passed, there were a lot of people that refused to use cannabis because it was illegal. And you're talking about a lot of people in the 65 plus bracket that were, you know, grew up during, you know, a lot of the, you know, prohibition era where it was demonized, and absolutely refused. And these people are getting help now. These same people are able to go to dispensaries and are able to get these products now. And then the other issue is, you know, there's some comments that are saying it's legal now. You know, they can't arrest you if it's THCA, which I understand the argument, like I do. And a matter of fact, like whoever came up with the whole THCA loophole is a genius. Like I just think that it's like all of a sudden I did a video, what is THCA, like years ago.
4 years
And
ago.
yeah, 4 years ago. Like it's the most trending video on the YouTube channel. And it was like, okay, it's almost like this is what how we used to explain decarboxylation when we talk about how to make edibles. And then someone had this brilliant idea to say, hey, well, it's not actually delta 9 until we heat it up. The caveat to that is that when the government tests, they're using gas chromatography, which decarboxylates. So if they test your THCA, it's going to come hot for Delta 9 anyway, just by the means of the way they test. But that kind of a loophole can be great for a little while. I think, a lot of companies are doing well with that. And I think it does level the playing field a little bit. But at the same time, there's no way that the government is going to allow that to continue. So, whether it be through the Farm Bill or rescheduling,
They're currently, the state of Florida currently is not allowing it to continue. Like, there are places that sell THCA that are not supposed to, and
yeah,
could potentially get into a lot of trouble. I have red tickets. I have stop sales placed on about a pound of THCA flower right now. Guess what, guys? It's sitting here until law enforcement comes and picks it up. I
yeah.
am nervous as fuck for that meeting. You know what I mean?
We've seen
Like,
people get arrested for having hot hemp.
and anybody that says that it's already legal, I dare you to take your THCA flower and put it in the palm of your hand. Like, make sure not labeled as hemp or whatever.
Look at an official COA.
Yeah, go take that flower and show it to a police officer and see what, an on-duty police officer, and see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, that's not freedom. That's not legal. That's not what we're striving for. And I'm not going to let a business that I opened up that could pivot into, something else. To be honest with you, a lot of people don't even really want to buy hemp.
I have a very unique situation with my store. So we're not a smoke shop. We have every walk of life that comes through the door. And, we sit and we talk about everything. And, the general public does not live in the echo chamber that the people that work in smoke shops and work in kava bars and that are in hemp stores live in. They have the same customers coming in. I see our community. I see a range of community from 18, 19-year-olds to 72-year-olds that come in, and some of them use cannabis, some of them are against cannabis. And what it is they're all confused. During this hemp thing, they were confused as well. They thought it was a good thing to shut down the hemp stores. Obviously, I did not. And that's why I came out and spoke against that happening. Again, we can't have a two-sided coin where everything that we believe is just from one section of the clientele. We have a large state with a lot of people here that could benefit from it that aren't accessing cannabis because it's still illegal in their minds. They aren't using hemp because they don't believe in it, and they aren't understanding that, this vote is actually a step in the direction for more plant medicine. We just had the MDMA thing shot down at the federal level, and they're trying to work with ethnobotanicals that have extreme benefits to especially PTSD. And, so I think that that's what we really need to look at. And the Last Prisoner Project, George Martirano, we got Robert Platshorn. Robert went around and did the Should Grandma Smoke Pot tour, and now there's a Black Tuna brand out there, obviously. But there's a lot of other states where there's confusion. This is growing very, very fast, and at the same time, the confusion's growing very fast.
Yeah, and again, I just think that you have to look at these things on the face of what they're actually going to do, and not necessarily the motivations behind them. And it's very easy to get caught up in the motivations of of people and companies. And I see that not just in cannabis, but all across the board, in all industries and all businesses. There's people that act out of self-interest, but they are not, just because they're acting out of self-interest doesn't necessarily mean what they're doing is the wrong thing to do. And I understand, why people feel, the way they do. I understand, why, people might think that, we want to, preserve the hemp industry. And I totally understand that. The way I see it, though, is I'm looking a few years down the road, and I'm looking at, businesses that are going to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort in building their brand and building their business, and it's just going to get shut down, and it's not going to be built in a way that's going to be sustainable if the federal government and the local governments are not on board with your business practices. And that's heartbreaking. People don't realize, when we started the Florida Cannabis Coalition, it was about getting people that wanted to be in the industry, that wanted to start a dispensary, um, connecting them, giving them the resources they need to do that. And when we were advocating for Amendment 2 in 2014 and it didn't pass, there were so many people that all of a sudden their ambitions, everything they were working on, just like was down the tubes, and we had to help them pivot. And it was really heartbreaking to see some of these people that had such a passion, and then they had to abandon a lot of those plans. And then the same thing after it passed, and it was very limited in the scope of who could qualify and who could actually have a dispensary, and the vertical integration. Now, you couldn't have growers, and you couldn't have processors, and you couldn't have people that specialized in what they did. You had to do the whole thing. A lot of that stuff was excluded a lot of people from the business. And it really, like, if I had known then what I know now, I would have advised differently. But I was it was a learning process for me, learning the politics behind things, learning how, like Tom was saying earlier, a lot of these issues are just used for other things, to use to see how many votes can we get turned out if we put this on the ballot, kind of thing. How much money can we raise if we support this, or if we're against it? And both sides are kind of playing it. I remember going through the donations, because that's all public, like all the political donations, and you can look it up. And companies donated to both sides. Like, companies were donating to the same companies were donating to the Republicans, and they were donating to the Democrats. It was really interesting and really eye-opening. And I really choose to stay out of politics because it doesn't make sense to me. And it's very like like you can see on the face of it that it's not about what the issues are, not about what the people want, but about raising money and ensuring that they were reelected. And it's become, politics has just become all about marketing and who's the
Again,
best marketer.
it's the legislature. There was a clear intent of the amendment when 2016 went through that never got processed by our legislature. And this turning people on each other is good for politicians. They're able to raise more money for their PACs. They're able to gain more support from their core support team. Like in 2012, when Colorado put it on the bill, everybody came out and voted blue. Remember, that was a big thing of when they were selecting key issues, whether it's abortion, cannabis, or any of these things. Right now, cannabis is the biggest issue, and that's why it's getting out there, because they want more people to come out to the polls and vote both ways.
Okay, so we've already run a little long, but there's it's been a great conversation, and there's a few things I still want to discuss with you guys. I want to put up this comment though while I'm saying this. Okay, so listen to what the governor just said. Hemp is not going away. There is a rumor. I've discussed this rumor with a lot of different people. It's surprising how often this rumor has come up. And granted, rumors are not, necessarily fact, but they can offer hope in many ways. The fact that Governor DeSantis is taking a stand against Amendment 3 and doesn't particularly seem to have much love for the MSOs. This has offered a little bit of hope for the hemp industry. And a lot of people are thinking, let's be honest, guys. Yes, we can oppose or we can be for it. Truly's got the money. A lot of people are for this stuff. Democrats are going to vote yes. About 50-50 split with Republicans in the state on whether they're going to vote yes or no. So, I mean, we could possibly have all the votes we need already to pass this amendment, right? the idea is that Governor DeSantis being against it and taking such a strong stance against it and being pro hemp has a lot of people are thinking that, you know, because the amendment says other licensed entities could possibly do this, that the hemp stores, you know, retail locations could possibly obtain a special license, not necessarily to grow marijuana, but to buy marijuana from these MMTCs and sell it retail in their locations. So what do you guys think the likelihood of that happening is? Like, have you guys heard this already? I see Tom shaking his head.
Yeah, you know, that Florida's a huge state. They can't grow all the cannabis that they need. They can't supply all the CBD products that they're going to need for it. But that cross branding and marketing is exactly what we did in Arizona. You know, we had a license with a dispensary. We created certain products, and then we also had a line of hemp products that went out, or products that were kind of like, if you think about the alcohol industry, you have liquor licenses, you have beer and wine licenses, you have low volume alcohol licenses. So you have multiple different things. Those things are possibilities in the future. But, you know, again, you have to have something that legalizes this, you know, to make that happen. You know, there's not going to be, you know, one end all be all. True Leave is not going to be the only game in town once recreation passes. And, you know, there's a lot of companies lining up to come here to the state that have, you know, big operations like in Las Vegas, Planet 13, and, you know, these mega stores that carry their model is to carry all the brands and the brands that are in distribution. And I think that, you know, creating some kind of legislation that allows certain products to be distributed by, and maybe as hemp stores, we have to jump through a few more hoops, meaning we have to have somebody on our staff that is trained and certified.
But it could be pretty early, you know what I mean? Like DeSantis calling on the legislator to pass legislation for smoking when he first came into office, right? It's very possible that, you know, come November, Amendment 3 passes, DeSantis is pissed. He wants to make sure that, like, not all the money at least goes to the MSOs. So he wants to, you know, he showed support for the hemp industry. He could call for that relatively soon. I know it's a long shot, and quite honestly, I'm not big on trusting that guy.
But Carlos, I don't understand though. Like, if you actually listen to what he said, and I've put out many clips, his main argument is that the streets are going to smell like cannabis. Right? His main argument, you go outside. I've video of him say, "Oh, you go outside, and it's gonna smell. This will smell like marijuana. It will smell like marijuana. It will reduce quality of life." That's his main
that's
argument.
the thing is that, okay, so his main argument is against the amendment is that, but if the amendment does pass it and he's okay, it's gonna smell like cannabis. We want to make sure that these fuckers that passed it don't make all the money.
I just
You know,
I don't see
I
why
get it.
the governor would do that. He also said that he was gonna, when he said smoking, remember that press conference with John Morgan? He also said that he was going to, break up the vertical integration, and then we heard nothing about that. I just don't see why he would, if he's so set on the fact that it's gonna smell like marijuana, why would he make it more pervasive? Well, wouldn't he try and hold it back? Like to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
Well, you know what? If they go back to the intent of the amendment, which was, you know, a company where, you know, remember the Blue Ribbon Commission that put that together, you know, Joe Redner's boys were on it, and there were a number of different people, that it was to have an open market, to allow distribution companies, software companies, like what we tried to build, you know, and brands that would be cross-marketed. But that vertical integration has locked it down. And you're right. He did say he was going to come in and implement the intent of the amendment, which is to open up the market. Maybe we will see something like that, because that would be legislation that went back to, you know, precedent, which is what us as the voters actually voted in 2016.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about, and then we can go ahead and end the show. This has been a great show, by the way. The possibility for home grow. A lot of people are sour on this amendment. It makes no sense to me because I remember the whole fucking regulate Florida thing.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of people are against the amendment because it doesn't include home grow. What is the possibility that we can get the legislator to put something forward about home grow, or even pass a whole nother amendment? I passing an amendment may prove difficult. Like, how much did Truly pay for they're $40 million deep or some shit like that into this amendment? So will somebody pay $40 million to fucking pass home grow?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that we'd have to paint a picture of how home grow can be profitable for that kind of money to come behind it. So, I've also learned over the past 10 years that nothing moves the needle in the legislatures and in government than business, and the businesses need to, figure out that there is a path to profitability for them, that, having people be able to grow their own medicine would increase the number of customers. They'd be able to sell clones and seeds, and there'd be a whole infrastructure surrounding that they could tap into. And then I think once some companies can do that, and show that, like for some reason Scott's Miracle Grow comes to mind. I know that they're jumped into the cannabis game a few years ago, but it just makes me feel like there's a whole infrastructure that can be built around home grow, especially education and stuff. And but there needs to be some incentive, some sort of business incentive for that kind of money to get behind it, for it not to be a grassroots effort. And yeah, you're right, I remember advocating for Regulate Florida like crazy, and it was shot down almost immediately from the first line of the proposed amendment, for by the Supreme Court, because it was too broad. I mean, had too many topics, too many issues. It wasn't single issue. We can't have home grow and adult use at the same time, because that's too many issues. And you're like, okay, well, we can't have home grow without adult use first, because the other way around just doesn't make logical sense. So we got to get there somehow. But I'm hoping that the dispensaries, the MSOs, everyone in the industry, realizes that it's not going to cut into their profits to having people be able to grow their own cannabis. And at the same time, hopefully some of this compassionate capitalism will prevail, and people will realize that it's helping more people than it is. Then and that's more important than their bottom line, which is very, very, very difficult. Especially, I don't think people realize that with public companies regulated by the SEC, you need to show that you are doing the best you can to maximize profits for your shareholders. That's the law in this country. It's against the law to not maximize profits for your shareholders. So you can't, like a lot of companies, there are companies that stay private so they don't have to abide by those laws, so that they can give back to communities and stuff. And I think that that's really, I think people really need to understand, how the industry, or how, just kind of corporations work. And I think we can get to home grow. You just need to show, the people, the powers that be, the people that have the money, how they can, make more of it, or why it's more important to help more people.
I think one thing that's really stifled uh, the medical system here in Florida is that it's in our constitution that we're not allowed to tax medicine, and it's in our constitution also that marijuana is medicine. So there's not a lot of incentive from the state. All the MSOs need to do is provide the legislator enough lobbying dollars to beat what they're getting in licensing. You know what I mean? And that's easy because they're not really licensing companies. So they're allowed to pretty much get whatever they want. But once they see that, like, once the legislator sees that, like, oh well, if we open the business up a little bit more, we're going to get more taxes in, with adult use. And all these, I think tourism is going to play a big part too. A lot of people coming to Florida to go to the beach and smoke weed. I think that's going to open up things by leaps and bounds. Nobody's really going to care about home grow anymore. People are going to start growing at home without an issue. I think the tax revenue is going to add a whole new thing into this game that we don't really even understand as Floridians. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean that's what opened up, Colorado. There was a lot of misinformation back when they legalized adult use in Colorado as well. But look at the tax dollars that brought in, how it improved the schools, how it improved the communities. We used to do an analyzation of the street Colfax Street, and how prior to cannabis, what it looked like, and post cannabis. It brings back this this balance to communities as well, especially when the people that are in it are making their communities better. And the tax dollars that come in from, there is tax dollars coming in from our hemp products. Obviously, we pay sales tax on it, but that's what 7.5%, 8%. If they tax it like they do at the other states, the real people, that it's going to cost is the consumers. They're going to pay a little bit more, but with that tax revenue, but the cost of cannabis is going to come down at the same time, just like it is across the country.
All right, guys, we're up to about an hour and a half now. It's been a great conversation, but it's time to bring it to an end.
I just wanted to say one more thing, if I could. I want to kind of emphasize that my first experience. I started smoking cannabis, in order to kind of quiet all the different racing thoughts in my head when I was a kid. And then my first experience with advocacy was going to the pot parade in New York City in 1993. And you march up Fifth Avenue, and there's I had no idea that there were people that like advocated for this, and this was like a thing. It wasn't just people smoking weed, and I've learned a lot over the past 10 years. And, something that, not a lot of people know, that I don't share with a lot of people, is over the past 6 months or a little bit longer than that, I've, seriously stopped using cannabis a whole lot because, I found that it hasn't been, doing for me what it once did. It was making me a little bit more introverted, and it was making me a little bit more paranoid, and I was less able to focus. And I think that that's okay, like for people to have their own experiences, and to adjust accordingly. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a right to this plant. It's a plant. And you really zoom out, and you're like, I can't believe that we've complicated this plant to such a degree. It's just it's a plant that grows pretty easily. People have been using for centuries for tons of different purposes, and we've just made it into this super complicated thing.
For real.
But I think it's like, I don't have like, a self-interest involved when it comes to being able to get cannabis, or like this has always been about, what's the right thing to do, like what's the right thing. And I think that the right thing is to allow people to have access to the things that they want, to let them make their own decisions. Your own body autonomy and stuff like that. And that's why I think that, it would be a good thing for people to have access. And if it was up to me, look, I support and I want everybody to be able to have a profitable business. I want people to be able to do what they're passionate about, do what they love, unrestricted. I'm very much libertarian leaning when it comes to that. Obviously, there needs to be regulations because capitalism can go kind of crazy. But at the same time, I think people should have the right to do, what they want, and in the way that they want to do it. So, I just wanted to say that this has always been, at least for me, not about, Pete Sessa, but about, that, being part of something, being able to help do, a movement, or being part of something bigger, than myself, has always been more important to me than, you know, necessarily what's best for me. So
A lot of people don't know this about Pete. I'll blow up your spot a little bit, but you used to do advertise for marketing for companies like Nabisco and
yeah, Nestle. Yeah.
Coca-Cola and Nestle, and you got out of that because you felt like you were harming children.
Yes,
Um,
I remember, like, this was the reason I left that job in as a marketing executive. Was I was working on a Nestle campaign for drumsticks. I know everybody's had a Nestle drumstick before,
oh,
but
they're so good.
you couldn't call it ice cream. It was called ice creamy treat. You had to call it. And I was like, whoa, this has just gone too far. And then I read a bunch of books like Food Politics and, the revolving door and the FDA and all these things. And here I am working on campaigns to try and sell this stuff to kids, and promote this, this cycle of bad health and medical treatment and insurance companies and stuff. And I just got really sick of it. So, like, when I left that company, I felt like I wasn't serving my job, to my fullest ability, because my heart wasn't in it. And thank God that, my brother introduced me to Tom, where I could, dive into something that I believed in, and that was a really, really big thing, to actually be doing something that you're passionate about and something that you believe in, and trying to help people, as opposed to just trying to figure out how I'm going to make $1 million. Like, that was really, that was really eye opening for me. But yeah, thanks, Carlos.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so this is the end of the show. Let's go ahead with one last thing we need to do, just to show a little appreciation for you guys coming on. Why don't you, and Pete, since you gave such a wonderful speech just now, why don't you go ahead, look in the camera, and tell people where they can find you, how they can support you.
Oh, well, if you want to come out to we're hosting an event on July 13th in St. Petersburg. It's at a really cool venue called Coastal Creative, where we're going to have a lot of talks. A lot of the stuff that we talked about on this show are going to be on these panels that we're going to have, with some really, really knowledgeable people. Michael Minardi, who was, the head of Regulate Florida and one of the, biggest cannabis attorneys in the world, is going to be talking about, legalizing drugs for adults, and, not just
My
cannabis,
attorney.
but psilocybin. And so, if you want to come out, you can go to canadelictickets.com, and you can, pick up a ticket and, come out to that event. It's also, the other aspect of the event is there's a whole wellness retreat where we're going to have everything from cacao ceremonies to holotropic breath work, which is how you can get high on your own supply. Not a lot of people realize you have DMT in your brain, and you can release that. Like, there's a reason monks meditate for, months, and they can, access these, types of internal psychedelics. And we're going to have a lot of that going on over there as well as music all day, a really dope after party and stuff. So it's a really kind of comprehensive event. You definitely get a lot of value out of it. That's been my goal, is to create as much value as possible for people to come in. And yeah, if you want to come out to St. Pete, that's Saturday, July 13th, and you can go to canadelictickets.com to get tickets.
It is a really cool venue. It's like right down the block from my St. Pete
It
store,
is, yeah,
and it's a pretty. They have a lot of like comedy events there, and it's pretty
yeah,
cool. And yeah, and another reason to go to Canadelic will be because me and Tom are going to be there.
yeah.
So Tom, your turn, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm usually at Chill Cawfee. I'm at either store. We have two, one in Riverview and one in Valrico. I invite anybody to come out here if you want to talk to me. We host meetups here. Also, we run a program called Wise Warrior Boxing. So Wise Warrior Boxing is out of Pete's brother's gym, Gracie Brandon, and my other coffee shop is inside Gracie Brandon. And what we do is we teach dialectical behavioral therapy through boxing techniques. So the same way as we prepare fighters to get into the cage or into the ring, to handle the stress that is accompanied with that. We use those same techniques to help individuals handle the stress in their everyday lives, be able to win that battle, that prison of your mind. It was developed out of Israel, and I partnered with Danielle Salber out there and Oleg here in the U.S. But not everybody is ready for psychedelics. I found out as well, or cannabis, and there's a lot of people out there that are suffering with mental illness. So being able to find all these alternative, and that's why I love what Pete's doing with the event, because and I put it in my book. I have a number of books on ayahuasca that are on Amazon. I also have my new mushroom integration book, which is a 12-week integration book, which you can help to follow. But, a lot of people aren't ready to use psychedelics, but they want to heal. So there are other, therapies, whether they are dialectical behavioral therapy, talk therapy, that doesn't work for everybody, especially men that don't want to talk to somebody about their past. So we're doing that. And then I'll be July 13th out there speaking as well at the event. And then hopefully we're going to be doing some more stuff. We're looking at some more retreats. We're looking at more get-togethers, and the ability to, help people to learn a little bit more about, what's really happening, and not, live in this fog of what we're being told.
I really like the Wise Warrior. I like the Wise Warrior. It's a very natural way to benefit, get the same benefits that you would off of psychedelics. So I can't wait to see what that develops into.
Yeah, we've been doing that also with a ceremony with cannabis with Mike Minardi for the last 3 years for veterans. So I'm integrating cannabis with the Wise Warrior program as well. I'd love to come out to your St. Pete place, Carlos, like we've been talking about, and kind of work together on some of that stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And before I end the show, I just want to say thank you to everybody that watched and participated and went in the chat today. One thing that we need to remember is that whether you're yes on 3 or no on 3, a lot of the people who watch the show aren't prohibitionists, and they want to free this plant in the best way they deem possible. So I appreciate everybody for wanting to free the plant.
And we're all humans. We're all humans. Remember that when you're attacking others, or you're being hateful or vile, you remember that we're all in this together. What your viewpoint is today may change, and it's okay to change your mind.
And my viewpoint might change tomorrow. There's a lot to be said about the fact that everybody understands that this plant is amazing, that this plant should be legal, and that we can all benefit from it in some way. So at the end of the day, that's right, Carrie. At the end of the day, free the plant. And I hope everybody watching this one day gets to just smoke a big ass blunt in the middle of the street right in front of the cops and have no problems, and be able to consume their medicine under freedom. So I appreciate
as ideal as that is, the local cities still can make their rules. Like in Boulder, Colorado, you can't even smoke a vape pen on the street. So we're not going to have cannabis everywhere like the governor is saying, smoke in the streets.
Too bad.
Maybe if we bring out your trailer with the big joint on it, we can do another parade.
Should go to New York.
No, it's all I'm trying to say is that we need freedom, and I whether you're no on 3 or yes on 3, I appreciate you and thank you.
But we need to have that conversation, Carlos. That's the thing. That's what Cannadelic is about, is having the conversation, opening all these viewpoints, so that people can come. Like, we're going to have these debates. These are tough conversations to have. These are things that need to be discussed. And that is why, going to an event like that in person, meeting with the people that are both for and against Amendment 3, and having that discussion to be educated so you can really have a full picture is really important. So, I just wanted to address that because I saw something in the comments.
And on that note, bye everybody.
Sideways V.